Good morning. Well, here in California, it's good morning. And welcome to all the participants for this virtual service. We have folks zooming in from all over the mainland and Hawaii, and we appreciate you taking the time to join us today. My name is Steve Okamoto, and I have the pleasure and honor of being your MC for this very unique memorial service. I am currently the president of the San Mateo chapter of the JACL. JACL is the oldest and largest Asian civil rights organization in the country. And I'm also the vice president of the Tan Foran Assembly Center Memorial Committee. This committee is creating a memorial for the 8,000 persons who were incarcerated at Tan Foran Racetrack during World War II. It's with great honor that the California Western Nevada Pacific District Council sponsored this memorial service to honor the sacrifices of our Nisei veterans. In past years, the district has co-sponsored a memorial service with the Golden Gate Nisei Memorial Post 9879 VFW, usually held at the Golden Gate National Cemetery in San Bruno. However, the long-lasting effect of the pandemic continues to unfortunately limit our many events. And as a result of these circumstances, the district once again will conduct this Memorial Day service virtually through the wonders of webinar technology and with the assistance of our talented tech team, UN Designs, led by Susan Yuen. We are pleased that you have chosen to be part of this solemn observance today, honoring the men and women who died serving in the US military. Our theme this year is the 10th anniversary commemorating the Congressional Gold Medal awarded to the 442nd Regimental Combat Team, the 100th Battalion, the MIS. In October of 2010, the 111th Congress approved the Gold Medal Award and presented the award the following year. We hope today's program will have special meaning for you and allow for reflection of the great sacrifices by our Nisei veterans who fought bravely for freedom despite the injustices endured by their families back home while still being incarcerated in US concentration camps. Before we begin, we will remind you that you are a virtual audience and that it will be recorded. However, the chat comments will be archived and not deletable. After editing, the program will be available on YouTube and you'll be advised as to when we post. If you don't want to be recorded, then please disable your camera feature. Now let's begin the program. We thank the Boy Scout troops from Golden Gate Area Council for assisting with this presentation and retiring of the colors. Please stand, if possible, for the posting of the colors by Troop 12, who will be accompanied by their famous drum and bugle corps. Troop 12 is just over 100 years old, and I am proud to say that I was a member just a few years ago of that wonderful troop. So here leading the Scouts and posting the colors, the Scoutmaster Dan Louie.
Color guard, front and center.
Forward, march. Hold. Left face. Color guards, present colors. Salute and over heart. 2. Color guards, post colors. Right face, forward march.
Please continue standing if possible for the Pledge of Allegiance led by Megan Otani. Megan is a Life Scout and the Senior Patrol Leader of Troop 343G. She is a junior at Abraham Lincoln High School, and on this Reverend Day, Megan is honored to lead the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Those in uniform, please salute, and those not in uniform, please place your hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. 2. Thank you.
Megan's grandfather, William Otani, was a corporal who served in the Korean War. He served in the 45th Infantry Division, 3rd Division I Company, 179th Infantry Regiment, and the 69th Ordnance Company. Unfortunately, he passed away in 2020 from COVID-19 complications at the age of 89. Megan, you are representing your grandfather's honor well. Thank you. Now we'll have an invocation by Reverend Laverne Sasaki. We thank Reverend Sasaki's willingness to present today's invocation. He retired in the year 2000, where after he served as Reverend in Buddhist churches in San Francisco, Mountain View, and Stockton. He is a graduate of Sacramento High School, Cal State Sacramento, Tokyo University, and the University of Pacific. He and his wife, Helen, have 5 children and 13 grandchildren. A 90-year-old sports fan, go Giants, he continues to stay active and spry, and we welcome Reverend Laverne Sasaki. Sensei, you're on mute. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. First of all, may I extend to all of you my Memorial Day greeting. I would like to begin with the traditional chanting of what we call Tisarana, a devotion to the 3 treasures of Buddha, Dharma, wisdom, and Sangha, brotherhood, in 3 languages. Ancient language of India, English, and Japanese. Buddham saranam gacchami, Dhammam saranam gacchami, Sangham saranam gacchami. I go to the Buddha for guidance. I go to the Dharma for guidance. I go to the Sangha for guidance. Namu Kie Butsu. Namu Kie Ho. Namu Kie So. A hero is someone like our many Nisei veteran heroes who have given his or her life to something bigger than themselves. In Buddhism, we call a true hero, a bodhisattva. A bodhisattva is one who vows to attain enlightenment, the highest wisdom, to save all living beings. True happiness, according to the Buddha, is a result of an enlightened mind, a way by cultivating wisdom and compassion. It is a mind that every human being has the potential to change. It is inner peace that changes the world to become one. It is inner peace that changes a world where we are all socially, emotionally, and spiritually together in oneness. May we, as we gratefully remember our Nisei heroes, also strive to exemplify and live the way shown to us. Namu Amida Butsu. Thank you.
Thank you, Sensei. During World War II, the soldiers of the 442nd Regimental Combat Team, the 100th Infantry Battalion, and the MIS, along with the 1399th Engineer Construction Battalion, were Japanese Americans determined to prove their loyalty to the United States. For the Nisei soldiers, their motto, "Go for broke," meant that they could put everything on the line to win the war against the Germans in Europe, as well as the war against racial inequality at home. Although there are no accurate sources, it's estimated that 33,000 Japanese Americans served in the US military during World War II. These soldiers came from the plantations of Hawaii and the American concentration camps on the mainland to demonstrate their honor. Together, the 100th and 442nd became the most highly decorated unit for its size and length of service in this history of the American military. Meanwhile, the interpretation skills of Nisei soldiers in the MIS are credited with shortening the war against Japan and saving countless lives. In honor of the Nisei veterans who made the supreme sacrifice for our country, we will observe a minute of silence as we present the honor roll of the units whose members have served or died in the 100th Infantry Battalion, 442nd Regimental Combat Team, the Military Intelligence Service, and the 1399th Engineer Construction Battalion. It goes without saying that we must show our respect and devotion, as well as admiration, for all veterans who have served and are currently serving in the US military to defend our freedoms at home and abroad. Thank you. On November 2nd, 2011, in a ceremony at the US Capitol's Visitor Center, the Congressional Gold Medal was presented collectively to some 300 living veterans of World War II. All the recipients were Nisei who had served in the 442nd 100th Battalion or the Military Intelligence Service, MIS. The medal is the Congress' highest expression of national appreciation for distinguished achievements and contribution. The medal was first awarded in 1776 and consequently is the oldest official American honor. Gold medal legislation must be co-sponsored by at least 2/3 of the members of the House of Representatives and the Senate. In conjunction with the Congressional Gold Medal, the service actions of the Nisei were reviewed for their valor and sacrifice. 21 Nisei soldiers were ultimately awarded the Medal of Honor. 2 of them we feature today, Senator Dan Inouye and Tech Sergeant Ted Tanouye. To commemorate the occasion of the unveiling of the Congressional Gold Medal, we share a short clip from the ceremony to revisit the collective presentation to the representatives of the 442nd, 100th, and the MIS, followed by a short commentary from Senator Inouye.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated for the unveiling of the gold medal by members of the United States Congress and representatives from each unit. Ladies and gentlemen, a proud member of the 2nd Battalion of the 442nd Regimental Combat Team during World War II, the Senior Senator of the State of Hawaii and the President Pro Tem of the United States Senate, the Honorable Daniel Inouye.
Mr. Speaker, leaders of the Congress of the United States, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you all for this extraordinary recognition. 70 years ago, Pearl Harbor was bombed by the Japanese. And as a result of the emotional upheaval that followed, Japanese, whether citizens or immigrants, were declared by the government of this country as being enemy aliens, 4C, and as such, unfit to put on the uniform of this land. But we didn't sit by and do nothing about it. We petitioned the government to give us an opportunity to demonstrate our love of country and our patriotism, which was granted to us. At the end of the war, General MacArthur said, as a result of the service of the MIS, the war ended by at least a year sooner. And then the two units, 442 and the 100th, were declared to be the most decorated units in the history of the United States. This has been a long journey, but a glorious one. And we wish to thank all of you, all Americans, for this recognition. It's heartwarming, and I'm certain that I speak for all assembled here, but more importantly, I'm certain those who are resting in cemeteries are pleased with this day. God bless America. God bless you.
Sadly, many of our Nisei veterans are passing away and can no longer speak on behalf of themselves or their comrades. One such person is Lawson Sakai. Considered a groundbreaker by many, Lawson, as a member of the 442 100th, was able to share the horrendous experiences of fighting in the European theater during World War II. After the war, he became an ardent leader for the Japanese American community in Gilroy, California, becoming president of the Gilroy chapter of the JACL. He was the first Japanese American to join the Gilroy Elks Lodge. Not an easy decision, but he wanted to help move the community forward. Lawson helped start and was the past president of Friends and Family of Nisei Veterans organization. He organized 442nd reunions around the country and the 442nd return to Brière in France. The people of Brière hold the 100th 442 in highest regard. Lawson was instrumental in developing public exhibits and educating people about Nisei veterans. He was given the difficult task of curating an Army exhibit about the 100th 442 on the USS Hornet, an aircraft carrier docked in Alameda, California. With all the horrors of war he endured and survived, we are grateful for his willingness to share his difficult stories with others. Lawson Sakai was a great man at a time when the country and our Japanese Americans needed a great man. Thanks to the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs, we now share with you a short clip from a documentary produced for the National Cemetery Association's Veteran Legacy Program. This highlights Lawson's engaging storytelling skills that we will miss.
In 1943, the Army opened enlistment opportunities for Japanese Americans, but only within segregated units.
It was 1943 when we were finally allowed to join the military. I volunteered for the 442nd.
The 1st Nisei Soldier Regiment, the 100th Battalion, was formed entirely of Nisei from Hawaii, where a sizable Japanese American population had prevented the formation of the same camps that dotted the mainland. The 100th Battalion was soon joined on the front lines of the European theater by the 442nd Regimental Combat Unit, comprised largely of volunteer Nisei soldiers from the Pacific states. Among other military campaigns, the 442nd are known for their liberation of the French city of Brière, as well as the rescue of the lost battalion.
And we're about 50 miles from the German border. And they tell us we're going to take the city of Brière. Bruyères is a key city because the railroad comes through Bruyères, and it's a feeder for the Western Front, for the German army. The 15th of October, we head out, heading toward Bruyères on the road. And all of a sudden, we get shots fired, artillery and rifle fire all over, scattered all over. And shots aren't coming from the city, they're coming from the hills up above. So we have to get up into all these trees, the heavily forested hills. We never fought in trees before. So from October 15 to 23, it took 8 days to clear the mountains. Then we could come down, clear the city, capture the rail line, and go forward. So on October 23, after 8 days of vicious fighting, we get pulled off the line. We got a hot meal, a change of clothes. Didn't even have time to clean our weapons, and they told us we had to gear up and go again. General Dahlquist does not want to lose his battalion. That's the 1st Battalion of the 141st Regiment of the 36th Division from Texas. He had sent the 2nd Battalion to try to rescue him. They got turned back. He had sent the 3rd Battalion of the 141st. They got turned back. 442nd had just come off 8 days of battle, but they're sitting there. So he said, you guys go get them. October 25 is the day we start out. And it's early winter, starting to rain. Well, it's miserably cold. You can't get equipment like tanks, jeeps up there because you're doing all the fighting in these hills. It's all manpower. But then we got shelled. We got knocked down by German artillery. We couldn't go forward. Again, casualties are high. 2 more days before the 442nd actually reached the lost group.
Some 200 Nisei soldiers perished, on top of hundreds of casualties, in order to free the 211 remaining men of the lost battalion. Military intelligence schools established in the Presidio in San Francisco and at Camp Savage in Minnesota trained Japanese Americans in the Japanese language, interrogation techniques, and translation to aid in the war effort. These military intelligence service members were also key players in the occupation and reconstruction of Japan following the war. Groups such as the Friends and Family of Nisei Veterans continue to provide support for service members and their loved ones, as they preserve memories and honor the sacrifices made by those lost in war.
It was a sacrifice that the Nisei boys had to make. We made a tremendous change in the minds of the general public, about who we were. We wouldn't be living here if we didn't do it.
So we're going to now have the benediction by Reverend Takawa. As we come to close for our memorial service, we appreciate Reverend Brian Takawa zooming in to close our service with benediction. Married 42 years, Reverend Takawa and his wife Kathy have 2 married daughters and 5 grandchildren, all luckily living close by. He has been an active member of the San Lorenzo Japanese Christian Church since 1982. And after 30 years in construction, he followed the call to become a pastor and currently serves as pastor of marriage and family since 2009. We appreciate Reverend Takawa's closing remarks. Sensei.
Thank you, Steve, and welcome everybody. Thank you to all those who put so much time and effort into creating this very meaningful and moving Memorial Day event, recognizing our Nisei vets. Thank you also for allowing me the privilege to honor those who sacrificed so much for our country. Like many of you have experienced, my dad and my mom, they were unjustly interned. Their families lost businesses, homes, and community. They had to start all over again once the fighting stopped. Despite this horrendous and demeaning decision by the United States to imprison innocent and loyal Americans of Japanese descent out of love for your families and for the honor of Japanese Americans you fought to protect a country that betrayed you. My dad served in the Korean War, and it did not hit me till later as a young adult how difficult that must have been to go to war for a country that treated his family so harshly. And many of you had the same understanding of that. I am humbled to come before you, each one of you men and women who battled for our country. Your dedication, service, and commitment has afforded generations after you to enjoy the freedoms and opportunities we now have in America. The Bible tells us that there is no greater love than this, that someone laid down his life for his friends. To all who gave the ultimate sacrifice of their lives, the surviving veterans and families, we are forever grateful. The willingness to lay down their lives for us is the greatest expression of love for family, friends, and country. We respect them, we love them, we thank you, and we are proud of all of you. Would you please bow with me in prayer? Father, God of heaven and earth, today we want to recognize and honor our veterans and their families for their military service, upstanding men and women willing to give up their lives when called upon to serve and protect their country. We pray that you will continue to bless them for the unselfish deeds and sacrifices they have made. Father God, please watch over these dedicated individuals and their loved ones. Would you cover them with your love and grace? In the precious and holy name of Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Takala. Retiring the colors will be a collective representative effort by the Boy Scout Troops 29, 58, and 343G. Troop 29 has over 85 years of history, founded in Japantown and sponsored by the San Francisco Buddhist Church. We thank Scoutmaster Mike Otani for coordinating his troops. Troop 58 is under the auspices of the San Francisco Konko Church. The troop leader is Carlton Yee. Troop 343G under Scout Leader Janice Toucher is the first female Boy Scouts of America troop chartered in San Francisco in 2019. They have 13 active Scouts. Troop 343 troop is run by youth who are preparing to be leaders through stewardship of the planet and volunteering in the community.
Color guards, attention.
Color guards, forward and march.
Color guards, prepare to retrieve the colors.
Color guards, retrieve the colors.
Troop salute.
Color guards, reform.
Color guards, dismiss.
Two.
Todd Yuzuriha lends his musical expertise to our program from Vancouver, Washington. Todd is a graduate of Stanford and Berkeley and a member of the Minidoka Swing Band. We thank Todd for his virtual participation by ending the formal portion of our virtual Memorial Day service with a video performance of the standard military signal to end the day, taps. Todd. To continue with the second part of our Memorial Day program, I am pleased to welcome today's special presenter, Robert Horstings. We are privileged to show his documentary, Citizen Tanouye. And at the conclusion of the showing, we will welcome Robert for a live question and answer session. This documentary follows a 3-day journey of 8 ethnically diverse students as they search for the clues to uncover the lost story of local World War II hero and Medal of Honor recipient, Tech Sergeant Ted Tanouye. Citizen Tanouye starts as a local quest for the history of a national hero, but quickly develops into a universal story about how a people struggle for acceptance as Americans, and one man's actions 60 years earlier can profoundly affect the lives of today's youth. Filmed by Craig Yahata and directed and produced by Robert Horstings, I show you Citizen Tanouye.
I thank all of you for being here on this profoundly important day. For their numbers and length of service, the Japanese Americans of the 442nd Regimental Combat Team, including the 100th Infantry Battalion, became the most decorated unit in American military history. Their motto was, "Go for broke." They risked it all to win it all. We recognize them today with our nation's highest military honor, the Medal of Honor.
The Medal of Honor is awarded to Technical Sgt. Ted T. Tanouye for extraordinary heroism in action on 7 July 1944 near Molino e Vento Alto, Italy.
In the year 2000, the local paper, the Daily Breeze, did an article about Ted Tanouye from Torrance High class of 1938. Jim Staniford, who is a founder and current trustee for the Alumni Association, brought that article to the executive and trustee board meeting.
And we all voted and decided that it would be a great project for us to work on and raise money to build a monument for Ted Tanouye.
It's kind of interesting when you talk to the students here and you ask them, you say the name Ted Tanouye, they don't know who it is. Hopefully the kids will learn to appreciate and be very proud that the school that they went to is one of the rare schools that has a Medal of Honor recipient as an alumni.
We are students of Torrance High School on a mission to research Mr. Ted Tanouye.
We know he is one of our graduates and a Medal of Honor recipient.
A monument is being built in front of our school in his memory.
We hope to discover both the man behind the medal
and his family in the Japanese American community.
Despite looking like the enemy, he volunteered for the U.S. Army.
He was an American citizen who gave his life for our country. I'm on the swim team and the water polo team, so those are probably my main 2 focuses with the school. I think the main thing I really like about World War II is the whole D-Day thing. Storming the beach, and if I was in that war, I would definitely do that.
My mom and my dad were both born in Iran. They came here when they were both about 20 years old.
I'm 4th generation. I don't speak Japanese, unfortunately. I don't know that much about my family history, but I know that my grandfather was in internment camps.
I relish in the fact that I am an immigrant. I take pride in being able to share in 2 cultures because I get to see things from kind of a different perspective.
I definitely enjoy English class. One of the other classes was the academic decathlon team, and a lot of people think, how much fun could it be studying the whole year?
I'll be honest, I'm not much of a scholar or anything. Just going to the beach hanging out with friends and stuff like that. You know, typical teenager, high school stuff.
I hope to attend a 4-year university back east. I love Torrance, but I want to branch out and experience the world and the country that we live in.
Ted Tanouye, basically, I haven't had a chance to really look into his history, and I would really like to.
So first of all, we split up into 2 groups. There was my group, which consists of myself, Kathy, Heather, and Tim.
And we came here to the Torrance High Library today to search for any information we could find on Mr. Tanouye.
And so Mrs. Lyle, who was our school librarian, actually helped us out by providing us with the yearbooks from the years 1935 to 1938.
So basically we used the yearbooks to find out what clubs he was in, what sports he played, and what he did with his high school years here at Torrance High. Well, when we first sat down, we were searching through the yearbooks for a few minutes at first, and the problem was none of the pictures were lined up really correctly, so we weren't really sure if it was him or not.
Yeah, I don't see his name on here. Maybe he missed picture day. Maybe he was like out sick or something.
Yeah,
Or
I have to admit
sophomore
that
class.
he's not under the senior pictures. I couldn't find. I don't know.
Right there.
Oh, look at that.
Good one.
Fight on for Torrance High.
Yeah, he's right here. This one.
Oh, he was in football.
He was
He was a football player?
Future Farmers Varsity and Key Club. Why did I find him in Key Club?
My name is Minori Minsueda. I'm 84 years old, and I graduated Torrance High School with Ted Tanouye in 1938. Yeah, he was popular because in sophomore, he was our president of sophomore class. He was in football and baseball, and I think early on he was in track. And he was in the Key Club, Varsity Club, a Japanese club, and Future Farmers.
So you know how you found the class prophecy in there? Go back to that and see what it is.
Was that in this one?
Each class, I guess they had this thing called the class prophecy, and it kind of told what they thought their classmates were going to do in the future.
Oh, here we go.
I wanted to see that one.
Ted Tanouye and Minori Suda
see
are
this one.
Japanese representatives to America.
When I read it, the part that I found was funny. It wasn't he was a representative of the United States to Japan. He was a representative of Japan to the United States.
I guess they still feel like he's not a totally wholesome little Torrance boy. He still has that kind of foreignness to him. So I guess that's one of the things that he has to deal with, and I understand that.
Today we came with my assigned group, which includes Talea Hagigi, Katie Webb, and Nicole Adachi, and we were assigned to
Research a little bit about Torrance in the 30s and 40s and the Japanese Americans living in the area.
We took a trip to the Torrance Historical Society Museum and were given a tour by Janet Payne, the curator of the museum.
We looked through different old yearbooks and newspapers to find different articles relating to the topic today.
We're going to research some old directories. Now, you all think of directories of a city as being a telephone directory, keeping in mind a lot of people didn't have phones. Okay, so it was called a directory, not always a telephone directory.
Let's see.
More on the roll. There's a lot of
Tansy.
Okay.
This is their way to
Look somewhere else, see if there's any other kind of listings. Oh.
What's this?
See, now this is very interesting.
Japanese within city limits.
Okay, what they have is the Japanese are listed separately in what year is this? 27, 28. Wonder if the Tanouye family's listed here in 27.
Oh yeah, right here.
You see them?
Mm-hmm.
Now this is who?
Niguma. Tanouye.
Tanouye. Okay.
Not important.
O-M-O-E.
My name is Isao Tanouye, brother of Ted. All 6 of us kids were born here in Torrance. Well, it was a farmland, really, and we were renting a house on the land to do some vegetable farming. Well, it was a real old house. Looked like they have no paint on it, you know what I mean? In fact, it didn't even have an address. Yeah, we just had a post office box that we would go into town of Torrance to go check our mail.
At the time, I was president of the Future Farmers Club. Ted had the hands-on experience of working for his father and mother in their little truck farm. He was a smart young man. He was as I can recall, and with the years of experience, he was a self-starter. He was one of these people you didn't have to tell him twice. He was kind of a person that knew what needed to be done.
Are you serious? That's nice. I wonder if his name's in here.
Oh, here we go. Ted Tanouye, halfback. Somewhat small, but fast and a hard-driving player. He is a senior.
Wow.
Crazy. Where's this picture in here? Most of the people back then were sports were like big guys, and I was surprised to find his name on the football team.
Many of the clubs that he was in, except for the Japanese club, he was one of very few Asians in that club.
So that was kind of cool that he was willing to take the risk and be the minority and still be active and not let his heritage stop him from doing what he wanted.
I guess you could say that he was a very dynamic person because he was very involved. Those are kinds of people that are really, it's great to know them and it's great to be around them.
We met Tack when we hired him to work for us. Tack was all I knew. Tack Tanouye was all I knew then. Yeah, he didn't. I didn't know that he went with Ted then. There's a lot of girls that Tack used to know, ladies, I mean, you know, came to the store and reminisced together in between his working hours. He went to fishing a lot. So he come back to the store and gave the girls a fish. And they really enjoyed it. Yeah.
I graduated a half a semester ahead of Tack. Once I was out of school, I didn't have much contact with him except the day of Pearl Harbor. We stopped at the store to get some groceries, and Tack was sitting on the sidewalk crying. But he says, "Look what those dumb sons of bitches have done to me." I mean, he really took it hard. Really did.
Katie and I paired up to read the newspaper articles from the end of 1941 to 1942, and we noticed how the newspaper was, like, what different articles were written during the time.
In December of 1941 was when everything started to begin, but by February, different relocations were already happening. Japanese were being evicted from homes, and curfews were being set throughout Torrance to keep them within until they could be dispersed to other places.
Executive Order 9066 was actually a bill signed by President Franklin D. Roosevelt, and it had basically stated that all people with Japanese descent were to be relocated to different parts of the U.S.
There was one article that we found actually in, I think it was a yearbook from December 12, 1941, that stated that the mayor of Torrance wanted to recognize the Japanese American citizens that lived here and did not consider them aliens or some other race. They were just part of the city of Torrance, where if you skip ahead to February 19, 1942.
Wait, city officials asked ouster of Japs from state.
He went on record last weekend as favoring the ouster of all Japanese, both aliens and citizens from the state. The mayor of Torrance, along with the councilman, went up to Fresno to show support in the removal of Japanese Americans. So within a month, it was basically the minute that Roosevelt signed his doctrine stating that this is what was going to happen, they changed their minds so quickly.
They came to put up posters on the telephone post, but already the rumor was going around saying that we all have to going to evacuate, but where we didn't know or anything.
I noticed that the newspaper articles referred to the Japanese as Japs.
But in reality, they really had no clue who these people were, because Japanese Americans living in America who were loyal to America were also being termed as Japs. And my impression was that anyone who had any Asian descent or looked Japanese were being just called Japs.
With the war with Japan, I guess we had the face of the enemies. But everybody was hysterical at that time because the Nisei fathers were taken by the FBI.
The FBI picked up my dad, and he was in one of those alien concentration camps in Tahunga.
So the only one that was left at home was the mother and the children.
I probably was about 13 years of age when we were incarcerated. Ted was already in the service. He joined about February the 20th, 1942. Anyway, we did the best we can and follow orders, and so everything was left, whatever, icebox, sewing machine, beddings, and whatever furniture. So we just got a cardboard box and stuffed everything what we thought was we wanted to keep.
Evacuees are ordered to take only the following: bedding and linen, no mattresses, toilet articles, extra clothing, silverware, and dishes, and essential effects. So basically nothing.
All the people that had to leave, they had to give up their stores that they owned, everything that they had.
Well, we were ordered to leave from the president, so we had to sell our market in a short notice, which nobody would buy, but this man, he said, well, he would take it over. Then we had to caravan to Santa Anita.
Japanese farmers will produce large quantities of
vegetables for the government's Food for Freedom program. Okay, that's ironic. They're having them work for Food for Freedom when they're not even free. Sad. Evacuation of Japanese will proceed at a rapid rate from now on. It's already been going at a rapid rate in a matter of a month, because it's still April. In a matter of a month, they've completely wiped out California. Our main coastal cities, with the exception of Los Angeles, will have been cleared of Japanese. So it's not just California. It's California, it's Seattle, it's Washington, it's Oregon, it's Arizona. It's, yeah, they're moving them all. 85,000. It's a lot. Yeah, it's a lot.
So today we're at the Go for Broke Educational Foundation, and we came here today to learn more about Mr. Tanouye's military years.
You are? I'm Heather. Heather? Nice to meet you. I'm Kathy. Kathy.
We met with Mrs. Kuwahara, she was very helpful in helping us find the books that we needed to research, and she gave us some helpful web addresses that we would be able to find information on TED.
Let me first tell you about Go for Broke Foundation has a monument in Little Tokyo, and I don't know if any of you have had an opportunity to visit, but this is what it looks like, and so I'll give you one of these. And on it are the names of 16,000 veterans who, Japanese-American veterans who fought in World War II. So one of the primary resources we have is this veterans list. So this is a good place to start if you know the name of somebody. So you're looking for a particular person or information, or tell me a little bit about what you're looking for.
Just basically anything about Ted Tanouye.
Okay. And you know what unit he was in?
No.
Okay, so let's start by looking for his name in here. Ted Tanouye. Okay, he was in 442nd Regimental Combat Team, K Company. So you know that the different units within the 442 were arranged by battalion and company, and they're in alphabetical order. So this information here, K Company, is real important to know because there were so many. You need to know where he was in the organization.
Well, in the aftermath of Pearl Harbor, several far-sighted individuals got together and came up with the idea to form an all-Japanese-American combat unit. This became the 100th Battalion Separate. They went to train in McCoy, Wisconsin for about 6 months, and then were deployed to Camp Shelby, Mississippi. The exemplary training record of the 100th Battalion convinced military officials of the necessity for a Japanese-American combat unit. They then opened up the process to both the mainland and Hawaii, which led to the formation of the 442nd Regimental Combat Team. The 100th would become the 442nd's 1st Battalion, and together become the most decorated unit for its size and length of service in U.S. military history.
My group went to the Japanese American National Museum in Little Tokyo, and it was a pretty neat experience.
A man named Bill Shishima was our tour guide, who was actually an internee of the internment camps down in Wyoming.
Have you heard of Executive Order 9066? Executive Order 9066 basically said that the military may move or remove anyone from anywhere for the security of the United States. Okay, that was way back in February 1942. 1 month later, we found out who anyone was. Anyone was people of Japanese ancestry. This is where the government started playing games with words, such as both aliens and non-alien. We all know what an alien is. What's a non-alien?
Citizens.
Citizens. But they didn't want to say citizens are going to be incarcerated, so they put non-alien. So the average person would just glance over the word non-alien.
We were sent to Santa Anita. When we first got there, it was so hot and muggy, and they had tables lined up. Being in here, it's just like being an animal.
He had to go live in a horse stable, and they told us to get the bag that was there and fill it up with straw. That would be your mattress. And it smelled terrible. It was terrible.
I was too young to, kind of a little naive to get into good and bad otherwise, but I think the older people than myself and their parents, I think they're the ones who really had a hard time.
I believe that they violated their civil rights because the Japanese were allowed to live here. They're citizens. They're supposed to have all the rights that everybody else does that lives in America. They shouldn't have to go through that because of just their race and culture.
The average height of the soldiers was 5'4", and the weight was 125 pounds.
When the volunteer came, they were asking for, 1,500 men. And my brother and I were the about 10,000 or so who volunteered immediately. We knew, we had enough American spirit to know that our allegiance is toward USA, not Japan.
Even though they put us into camps, we're still Americans. And when they asked for volunteers to form the 442nd, I had made up immediately, my mind was made up that I would volunteer. I was 16. I had to wait till I was 17 before they'd take me in.
These guys, 17, 18, 19, I mean, the stuff they must be thinking about, death and getting hurt, I mean, that's probably all the things running through their minds. They're living through a war, and here I am worrying about high school and where am I gonna get into college and girls and just my stuff, the things that I worry about seem so minor compared to what they're going through.
Ted had the Purple Heart, the Distinguished Service Cross, and the Combat Infantryman Badge.
Yeah, I got that.
You got those already?
I was astounded that they had all the medals. They received all those medals, but I didn't realize that they had the most medals of any regiment in World War II. So that was an eye-opener for me.
Okay, this is the original barracks from Hart Mountain, Wyoming. During World War II, there's 10 camps, and we had about 120,000 people of Japanese ancestry in the camps. So let's go on the inside and show you the complete story there. This barrack used to be 120 feet long, but because of the size, we have only a 40-foot section here today. And all the 10 camps were similar, but not the same. Similar, but not the same. It wasn't unusual to see parents bathing their infant children in the units. We didn't have any water supply, but yet the warmth of the room, the parents would often bathe their infant children here rather than go maybe 100 to 300 feet away just to bathe the children. We were fed 3 meals a day. Anyone know what the military called the cafeterias?
Mess hall.
Mess hall, thank you. By the way, we use all military terms. So we lived in barracks, we ate at the mess hall. And this is what really broke up our family unity. I was a young kid of 11 years old. As a family, we used to go eat breakfast together. But by lunchtime, dinner time, forget it. We're out playing with the boys, we're going to school. So it really broke up our family unity. We didn't get to discuss family matters over the dinner table because we didn't eat together.
There's not much family structure because they're all separated and they don't have that quality time to spend with each other. For me, right now, my family, every dinner, we sit down and we talk about how things are, what's going in our lives, because that's pretty much the only time we're all together, like, talking.
This was one of the most embarrassing things in camp. The bathrooms or latrines. Okay, as you see here, partitions but no doors. So people used to bring blankets or sheets or even cardboard boxes, put it in front of them. But behind me, the partition used to be here, is the smallest unit, 16 feet by 20 feet for family of 2 or 3. This was the largest room, about the size of your 2-car garage. That's where my family was incarcerated. So by the time you put 7 beds in here, it's wall-to-wall beds. In Wyoming, we're fortunate that we got an installation called Celotex. See above that small window, the white patch? That's insulation, and they insulated the room as well as gave us a ceiling. Most camps did not have a ceiling, so it's very poor insulation for heat as well as sound. So they said us kids were fortunate that the parents wouldn't dare raise their voice because it would be heard throughout the 120 foot of the barracks.
Hearing all this kind of made me think about how kids today take take a lot of things for granted. We live in nice homes, we have food to eat, and we have all the freedom that we could possibly want. And yet, these people were thrown into these camps.
I personally am of Jewish descent, I guess you could say, and I had families that were in concentration camps over in Europe and Romania, actually. So seeing that, it was kind of a glimpse of my family's past, and it was really depressing, and it was really kind of scary to think that in the home of the free, that could be happening here.
That was really some kind of experience. Ted was in the service. Camp Shelby to Jerome was very, very close. It wasn't too far, you know, Mississippi to Arkansas. So when he came to see us, he was kind of happy that we're all together, but he wasn't very pleased that we were all behind barbed wires and he was in the service, you know. So it was a real highly mixed emotional thing. It was, you know, he says, well, I think he had the intuition he had to go out and prove himself and prove to the U.S. that we're worthy of the country that we live in, I think.
Here's that list of other internet resources also, if you want to check out some other websites.
Thank you.
This website talks a little bit about how within the 442 there's conflicts between the Hawaiian Japanese and the mainland Japanese. We learned a little bit more about some of the problems that were involved in the 442, including the conflicts that there were between the Hawaiian Japanese and the mainland Japanese, which is something I'd never really considered.
When people think, oh, all Japanese regiment, they don't really think about that there's different kinds of Japanese.
The Hawaiian Japanese were known as Buddha heads, and the mainland Japanese were known as katonks.
I guess it comes from a lot of different sources, but basically it's like when a coconut hits the ground, it makes that noise, katonk.
The two groups, I don't think they got along very well in the beginning.
My first contact with mainland Japanese Americans was that they acted like Caucasians, and therefore each person tend to live in a very independent, very isolated ways. So the Hawaiian ohana spirit, the family spirit is, well, you got a $100 bill, just put it there and just use it up, you know, and don't ask any questions.
Here, you know, the Hawaii people were all private, well, we were all private to begin with. And the cadre was, at that time, all mainland. I know for a fact that tension did arise between the Hawaii people, the boys, and the mainland boys.
It kind of shows that even the supposedly united Japanese regiment had their own differences to work out.
We actually took a visit to the Japanese American National Museum Resource Center, where we were able to look at microfilm of newspapers that were given in the internment camps.
It was pretty neat to see all the activities that the Japanese Americans were able to do while they were interned.
It was pretty interesting because we found a lot of things that were very similar to actually what we see in the papers today.
We found out that although it wasn't normal what was happening, they were trying to make it seem as if everything was normal. The newspapers that we looked at had a lot to do with sports. They tried to keep themselves busy. Basketball was a major thing going on. They also tried to keep parties going. They talked about homecoming queens and prom queens and whatnot within the newspapers.
When we were looking through camp papers, we came across the listing of servicemen from Camp Shelby, and we came across Ted Tanouye's name.
Ted was like a cadre. He was already through training. So when he came to see us, he brought some of his friends where they were Hawaiians, you know?
I was 17 at that time. The USO was right in my block, but I was never allowed to go over there, and I was so curious that one night I went and I met these Hawaiian soldiers.
I distinctly remember attending a dance that the group up there had planned for us. And I still distinctly remember dancing with a mainland girl. I don't think I told my wife that, but anyway, I did go up there.
There was a lot of chaperones at that USO because no hanky-panky could go around at that time. But the boys were curious about us being from the mainland being put in Jerome.
To walk into a camp surrounded by barbed wire and watchtowers manned by soldiers with machine guns, it was a shock.
They really realized that, hey, the mainland people were all incarcerated and behind barbed wires, you know, where their parents and friends back in Hawaii were not.
But I was too young and unsophisticated to realize the unjustness or even the illegality of that situation.
We as 442nd members were already being discriminated. We formed a separate unit. And we have to show to the world, so-called, that we are, you know, a real American unit, fighting unit. And going overseas and seeing action, you don't say that's your action and my action anymore. There's only one action. Everybody's involved, and isn't that the family affairs?
European. So wait, the date is September 6th.
So the 100th Battalion, which is in blue, was there in Italy before the formation of the 442. So then you can see that right there is where the 442 comes in Rome.
Well, coming into this, I didn't really know much about the 442nd. I didn't know where they were basically stationed. They were stationed in Italy. I thought maybe that they participated in D-Day and maybe Ted served on D-Day or something like that. But he served in Italy, and you don't really hear much that happened in Italy. You mostly hear about what happened in France and all that kind of stuff. So it was cool hearing about a different side of the story.
Okay, this area here is what the military referred to as Hill 140.
Yeah, I guess it's probably right around there. That's in July.
Then to October. There he is. I found a description of what it was that he did to earn the medal. Wow.
I remember Hill 140 very well because we occupied one side of the mountain and the Germans were on the other side, and perhaps even at the top as they kept on observing us. Then all of a sudden, before we knew it, the Germans started to counterattack, and that's when confusion and chaos took place.
I didn't expect to find such like a graphic explanation of Ted Tanouye's exploits, like his the battle that got him the Medal of Honor.
Sergeant Tanouye led his platoon in an attack to capture the crest of a strategically important hill that afforded little cover. Observing an enemy machine gun crew placing its gun in position to his left front, Technical Sgt. Tanouye crept forward a few yards and opened fire on the position, killing or wounding 3 and causing 2 others to disperse. Immediately, an enemy machine gun pistol opened fire on him. He returned the fire and killed or wounded 3 more enemy soldiers. While advancing forward, Technical Sgt. Tanouye was subjected to grenade bursts, which severely wounded his left arm. Sighting an enemy-held trench, he raked the position with fire from his submachine gun and wounded several of the enemy. Running out of ammunition, he crawled 20 yards to obtain several clips from a comrade on his left flank. Next, sighting an enemy machine gun pistol that had pinned down his men, Technical Sgt. Tanouye crawled forward a few yards and threw a hand grenade into the position, silencing the pistol. Holy crap.
He then crawled several more yards and silenced 2 more enemy positions that were firing on his men. Then he reached the top of the hill and fired on several retreating Germans. It wasn't until his men had reached a secure position that he sought medical attention. In all, Ted Tanouye destroyed 2 machine gun nests, 3 pistol nests, and killed or wounded over 22 enemy soldiers.
So let's see if we can see, if you can find out when he received it. Now that's the actual citation that was awarded that year by President William Jefferson Clinton. So that should be a clue.
Is that it?
Yep.
Oh, it's pretty recent.
So she found that he was awarded the Medal of Honor in June of the year 2000.
Wow.
And that actually, if you look, the act of heroism that earned him the Medal of Honor was on July 7th, 1944. So you can see that it took a number of years. In the year 2000, they awarded the Medal of Honor to 22 people. and 20 of them were Japanese American veterans from World War II.
Congress, they reassessed all of the Distinguished Crosses award recipients from the 442nd Regiment because they thought that there might have been some discrimination involved, preventing those soldiers from getting the Medal of Honor. And Ted was actually one of the soldiers who was later given the Medal of Honor.
So let's go back now to the Go for Broke website, which is www.goforbroke.org.
We listened to some oral histories of some of his fellow soldiers and comrades during the war. They had so much to say about Ted.
And last name, we're going to put Kajiwara, K-A-J-I.
We arrived in Camp Shelby April 12th, I think, and I met Ted Tanouye because I was transferred to the headquarters platoon, and of course the mess sergeant belongs in the headquarters platoon too, so I got to know Ted very well.
Ted was our head chef in Camp Shelby, you know, preparation of food.
Then he volunteered to serve in the 2nd platoon as a platoon sergeant.
Well, I first met Ted in K Company, and I can't tell you exactly when it was. I was a little bit on the cocky side. He was a very helpful sergeant, not like a lot of them that I've met who barked at you, can't you understand English, and all this baloney would come out from him. Because even when we went overseas, he used to come to me and he'd say, now don't go out there and think you're going to win the damn war. Well, I said, I'm not going to win the war. I says, they shoot at me, I get mad. And he says, that's what I mean. You can't do anything if you're mad. Before you do things, think. Before you say something, think. You're on the front line now. Now you can't get anybody mad at you because you have to depend on everybody to keep you alive. You know, I was just a young kid, smart aleck, thought that I could lick the world. You know, Rudy, you're just like my kid brother, the youngest one. And he says, I gotta take care of you like my kid brother.
That's cool. He reminds me of myself.
What, the smart-ass kid part?
And cocky.
I think with water polo, if you don't have a well-liked captain or a well-liked person that is leading the team, then most people are not gonna want to give you the ball, or they're not gonna help you out if you're in trouble. So I think that's important. Ted wasn't a guy that would just yell at you and drill the information in your brain. He would explain it to you and say why you need to do these things. He wouldn't be yelling at you, which is I think is the most important thing, because when people yell at you, you tend not to listen. It just goes in one ear and out the other. And if you have a rationale behind it, then usually people pay much more attention to it and learn from it.
Yeah, Hill 140, him and I talked quite a bit about it. When I was talking to him and I said, hey, you bugger, I heard you led the platoon. And he says, well, that's my job. He says, I'm not doing anything because I want to go out there. He says, that's my job, I gotta do my job.
He came right to the front lines, you know, to fight with us. He didn't have to. He was the head chef. He could have come home safe.
I think Lieutenant Smith ordered some of us to guard the area where Ted Tanouye was with an engineer diffusing a mine.
When Ted came next to me, I was kneeling and he knelt next to me, yeah? I told Ted, look at that guy, dangerous. I think, he's gonna maybe start pulling the thing, and I know, I think it's gonna explode. And sure enough, a few seconds later, I think he pulled it, following the wire. I guess he must have put a little more harder, and the mine exploded. And as I said, I was here, Ted was next to me, and Ted got all the blasts.
But I was there when the mine went off and hit his body, and when they were carrying him back, he was still alive, and I guess he died a little later after that. But I remember him saying, "Go for broke, go for broke." And so as he was passing by on the litter.
I would say the most powerful bit of information that we came across today was when one of Ted's fellow soldiers was talking about how Ted died. Listening to him sort of break up over speaking about this death, it was very touching. Even though I didn't know Ted Tanouye, I could really see how people cared about him, and I could imagine what it would have been like to lose such a kind and loving leader.
So he was well-respected, good leader.
I have actually a special surprise for you. I think you had mentioned earlier that you thought Ted Tanouye still had some relatives that still lived in the area.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I want to introduce you to Mr. Esau Tanouye.
How are you? Nice to meet you.
This is Ted Tanouye's younger brother.
When his brother Nisei Tanouye came to visit, he brought with him so much information about Ted and his family, and that was the part that really I was so much interested in.
Nisei brought a folder with a bunch of Ted's memorabilia and all the letters that he wrote home and just information about Ted. And he also brought his Medal of Honor, which I thought was really cool to look at. I've never actually seen one, what it looks like. And he also brought a case with all of the other awards that he got and the 2 Purple Hearts that he received. And so he just had a lot, the letters, you could kind of tell that he was a real family man, that he cared about his family, he cared about the friends around him.
Ted's last letter to his family, that was pretty amazing. Ted talked about how lonely it was on the front, being in a foxhole by himself, and how much he enjoyed receiving letters from his family.
We're cracking up about this one line in one of the letters. He was like, "Oh, yes, it's the usual artillery fire and bullets going left and right." And so he talked about the war as if it wasn't a big deal. And I think that kind of helped his family kind of keep calm. And he seemed calm throughout the whole ordeal. He was never panicky or worried. He just expressed that it did get lonesome out there.
That's all for now.
For now, till later. So long, and my regards to all. Brother Ted.
Oh.
And this was August?
27.
At the museum, Billy and I were looking through the microfilm of the camp papers of Rohr, Arkansas, and we came across an article that talked about Ted Tanouye. Ted Tanouye dies in Italy. Technical Sgt. Ted T. Tanouye, son of Mr. and Mrs. Makuma Tanouye of 61F, succumbed to wounds received while serving in Italy. A telegram came last Friday notifying his parents of his death on September 6th.
Dear Mrs. Tanouye, I deeply regret that it is necessary to confirm the telegram of recent date informing you of the death of your son, Technical Sgt. Ted T. Tanouye. The significance of this heroic service to this country will be preserved and commemorated by a grateful nation, and it is hoped that this thought may give you strength and courage in your sorrow. My deepest sympathy extended to you in your bereavement.
Wow.
Yeah, this is a letter nobody wants to get.
Yeah.
When they announced that Ted Tanouye got his Distinguished Service Cross Award, just to find all that was, quite fascinating. We were just almost astounded that, wow, he's just one man, but even through all that, everyone was still like family, and the paper still wrote a nice article, almost a page long.
And then, the Tanouye family was in the camp in Arkansas, and when Ted was killed, they brought Mrs. Tanouye, his mother, out of the camp into Arkansas to receive the Distinguished Service Cross. And then after that, she was taken back to camp.
Oh.
I guess it kind of showed how the mood of the country was at the time, because even though he was a war hero, at that time, they still didn't treat Japanese Americans the way that they should have been.
In a sense, she had to have been thankful to the U.S. that the government was honoring her son for his war actions, but almost immediately after, everything contradicts itself and she's put behind the barbed wire into internment camps again. She must have been honored, yet at the same time somewhat resenting the country for what they're doing at the time.
Issy, he was very helpful in all of the family history that he provided for us. He was just jovial and lighthearted, and I can see that, I can see how Ted was well liked by everyone just by Issy's time with us.
We went to the Go for Broke monument, and the whole monument was pretty impressive.
There were 8 of us, and we had the opportunity to talk to a few veterans there. My first impression was that they would be mean. I don't know why, but that was just my first impression.
I'm Cam. George. Nice to meet you, sir. Hello, George.
I think what made it so special to me was being able to speak with some of the actual veterans who take the time to spread the knowledge about the 442.
We're all from Torrance High School. We were here to just learn a little bit more about the 442nd Regimental Combat Team and also just the history of Japanese Americans within our area. Kind of funny how when I first met Colonel Young-Ok Kim, how the first thing that went through my head honestly was, good Lord, what is a Korean man doing here with a group of Japanese veterans?
Even though I'm Asian, like, a lot of Asians have like their own prejudices against other Asian groups.
My grandma was actually growing up in Korea. She, at the time, Japan had annexed Korea. They had invaded into neighboring territory and try to put upon their beliefs on the Korean people. Japanese Americans were put in an internment camp that was in a closed setting. Symbolically, Korea was its own internment camp. I had the courage to ask him myself, sir, honestly, what went through your head as you were being told by your commanding officer that you were being put into an all-Japanese American unit?
And then when I was assigned, when they questioned, they said, I don't think you understand, this is a Japanese unit, you're Korean, and Koreans and Japanese traditionally don't get along.
And I thought to myself, well, what is this man thinking, Has he no pride for his home country?
I said, they're Americans and I'm American and we're gonna go fight for America. And so that's how I stayed with the unit.
I'd say that was a brave thing to do, and it was really courageous of him. And I think me and Billy were both kind of awed by him, and we respect him a lot.
That really, really made me think, this whole, everything that we've been studying up until now was not a matter of, oh, you're Japanese American, you're Korean American. Everyone is American.
I was born and raised right here in San Gabriel Valley. When the war broke out, I got home and they said, Dad is gone. The FBI came over the house, turned the house upside down, took my dad to, I don't know whether you know, but Tahunga, and he was put inside of a stockade. And the guns were facing in, not facing out,
Mr. Asato's father was taken away because he was involved in the Japanese language school.
It moved me because my great-grandfather, just because he was the treasurer for a Japanese language school, he was also arrested, and he was separated from his wife and his child for over a year. I think that this experience will make me want to do some more research on my family history and also a little more research on the 442nd Regiment because I hadn't even known about it before.
Seeing the pictures in the newspapers, you kind of don't realize who they are and you don't really put a name to it. You kind of just know it as, oh, there were Japanese Americans that helped fight for the U.S. But when you actually get to meet true veterans from there, it gives it a sense of realism. What made you decide to go into the service?
When the military came around for volunteers, a bunch of us went in because we felt that this is an opportunity to show that we're good Americans, because it was a chance for us to prove that we are loyal as anybody else.
We learned that you guys did form an all-Japanese regimental unit to prove your loyalty to the United States. And I was wondering that when you returned back after the war, did you see a change right away? Something that we hadn't come across was did they actually accomplish it? Did this test work? And it was the saddest answer. They said no.
The West Coast, as you know, was very, very anti-Asian and particularly anti-Japanese.
We tried to buy homes, and I hate to talk about Torrance, Gardena area, but you know, they told us point blank they wouldn't sell it to us. They told us point blank, says, we don't sell to you people.
We keep saying they did this to prove their loyalty, but the truth is they shouldn't have even needed to do that, but they did, and it didn't help.
I was quite shocked to hear the way that they didn't talk bad about what had happened, really. I mean, they mentioned how it was hurtful, but they were proud to fight for the U.S. You know, they were proud to be Americans, and it really came across in how they were talking to us and what they were saying to us.
I think the war made a big difference in the vets. Having gone through that terrible experience and survived, I think they felt they could overcome any odds. I think that's one of the reasons so many of them came back to California, despite the hostile, environment.
When was it finally that you saw a definite change?
It began when the soldiers of other units started to return from Europe. I think they were the biggest supporters. They especially knew about the 10442 in Europe, because until the vets, other than the Japanese-American vets, start talking about what happened in Europe and the valor and everything else, you know, that changed a lot of people. They got educated about what happened, and I think that changed everything for all of us.
I think with any great change that happened throughout history, none of them happened overnight. I think they all took quite a few years or even decades.
And it wasn't actually until the mid to late 80s that President Reagan actually signed House Resolution 442 in commemoration of the 442nd. The resolution was with intent that the government apologize to all the Japanese people who were forced to be sent to these internment camps.
I think if the Americans knew the history of the Japanese Americans during World War II, that I think this would really have an effect on how the Americans now are treating the Middle Eastern people after the 9/11 attack.
Until people's eyes start opening up to what is really out there, people aren't ever going to change.
What definitely will stick with me is how I was wrong. My grandfather was in Pearl Harbor. He was on the USS Maryland December 7th when that happened. So my entire life I've grown up with a kind of a negative tone towards the Japanese because of the fact that he almost died there, and I would not have been created therefore. So having gone through this week and researching this and finding out that the same people whose, I guess, heritage you may say, came across on December 7th were helping fight that and gave up their lives for the U.S., even though they were Japanese. It definitely changed my personal perspective on a lot of things.
George Fujimori, who was in the MIS, he actually showed us around the monument.
I knew there was a lot of people that served, but just seeing all those names, just really, I visualized it a lot more and I saw how many people there were.
Actually going across the monument and like feeling everybody's name engraved on the wall, and that makes you feel like, wow, there were so many up there. There was about 16,000 plus.
I noticed that there were stars next to people's names, and I later learned that those were the folks who passed away during the war.
We actually used the search tool that was available at the monument, and we were able to find Ted Tanouye's name.
Besides the monument, there was also separate pillars, and there was one for the Medal of Honor recipients.
To see Mr. Tanouye's name on the list, someone we've been looking for in every project that we've been doing so far this week, someone that had graduated from my grounds, from Torrance High. It was just a real honor to see that.
Well, actually, my dad's side reaches back to Germany and Sweden, and my mom's side is originally from Japan, and my grandfather was in the 100th Battalion. And on Tuesday, when we were at the Go for Broke Educational Foundation, I went over to look at the veterans list and found that my grandfather was on the monument. So when we were at the monument, I had a chance to find his name and make several etchings of it for posterity. I'm extremely proud to have Japanese heritage.
It was really amazing to actually see how many people showed up for Ted Tanouye. It was just such an honor for me, and I got to meet some of the veterans as well.
First time I saw Rudy was when we were at the Go for Broke Educational Foundation Center. Seeing him there, like, I could really relate to him just because he was very young, very brash, very cocky, like how I am, pretty much. And then when I first met him at the dedication ceremony, it was really cool to hear some of the stories he had, and he seemed exactly as I would imagine him.
All of the people that we had spoken to were together in one place. After all we had learned about Ted Tanouye and the 442, it was really special to see some of the soldiers of the 442 coming to honor Ted.
When the keynote speaker, General Shinseki, appeared, for someone of this magnitude to step out into a small community and just appear at a ceremony like this really made me rethink about the importance of the ceremony.
Honoring Ted Tanouye in this way is fitting and important. But if all that happens today is a dedication of rock and mortar that no one visits in the future, no one remembers why it was put here on this day, we will not have learned much from the sacrifice and the honor of this brave and noble American and others like him. They did it for all of us. I'm a direct beneficiary of their service and their sacrifice, and so are all of you, even those of you who don't share the Japanese heritage.
With this monument being put up in front of our school, I'll never lose the feelings that I've learned from doing this research, feelings of gratitude and appreciation for what these soldiers have done, and I don't think I'll ever forget their story, especially with a monument here always to remind us.
It's an honor to know that the monument to Ted is being built in front of our school. We look out those windows every day in the middle of history class, and to know that when I come back for my 10-year high school reunion, that monument's still gonna stand, and I can say that that was built while I was a junior at Torrance High School, while I was there, and that, in a way, we're all a part of it.
In building the monument, people are gonna start questioning, well, what's that monument all about? Who's Ted Tanouye? And I know that if someone asked me that question, I could say, you know, oh, why don't we have a seat? I have a story to tell you.
Wow, What a film. Before we start the Q&A session, I'd like to give you some time, the audience members, to write some questions in the chat feature. I want to quickly introduce our guest speaker and then let him take over. Our guest speaker is Robert Horstings. Robert is an oral historian, author, and documentary filmmaker. As a volunteer with the Go for Broke National Education Center's Hanashi Oral History Program, he has helped to record nearly 300 Japanese American World War II and Korean War veterans and their stories from across the United States. He has co-produced the Shadows for Peace speaker forums featuring atomic bomb survivors. Working with photographer Shane Sato, Robert co-authored the coffee table books, The Go for Broke Spirit, Portraits and Courage, and The Go for Broke Spirit, Portraits of Legacy. He has received an Emmy, Edward R. Murrow Award, and the National 2012 Radio Television Digital News Association Unity Award as a producer of Witness American Heroes. Welcome, Robert.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
We do have a few questions from our chat audience. And the first one was kind of, was a no-brainer because, you know, everybody nowadays uses the internet to do all their research. Well, maybe back when you did it, the internet wasn't as powerful as it is today. But how difficult was it for your students to do all this research when they really didn't do much Googling?
You know, the way this came about actually is that we had started doing the research ahead of time because we were introduced to a group of about 10 people that we were told, oh, they know Ted in some manner, to some extent. And so when we interviewed them, we realized they don't know enough to tell a story because we were actually originally asked to do a 10 to 15 minute bio piece. When we started doing the research in like the Torrance Historical Society Museum, we found all this great stuff, but no cohesive way to put it together. And Craig had actually wanted to utilize students in a previous film done for Go for Broke called A Tradition of Honor, but couldn't find a way to do that. And he reminded me that that's what he wanted to do. And that was the perfect vehicle for us to do this film this way, because by involving these students into a research project, it allowed us to link all these different unlinked resources. The Torrance Historical Society Museum is 1 block over from the most famous Torrance bakery that everybody knows about, but these students didn't know that existed. They really actually thrived. And one of the things I like to say is the history you can touch touches you. And that was really the case in that going to the library or going to this historical museum, getting to touch these newspapers, getting to read these weathered pages and read what was actually on the minds of people at that time, really resonated with them, you know, and to go to these venues, all these different sources, going on these field trips, essentially, you know, it is much more interesting than just sitting on a computer. And as you said, you know, Google wasn't as strong as it was or it is today. There weren't as many resources out there at that time. You know, we were filming this in 2004. And so, yeah, I think they really enjoyed the process. We really enjoyed being with them.
These young men and women seemed awfully bright and awfully interested. What was the selection process in choosing these children, these kids?
You know, it's kind of funny because we knew what we wanted to do there, and we're trying to set up this interview, and it kept getting delayed because we did this in May, right when everybody's graduating and all the tests. I went on the last day. We determined if we don't get the shot this day or lock it down, we've got to go to a plan B, which would have been nothing near this. They introduced us to a class of students, and we asked them to sign up if they're interested in a project we're going to do during the summer, a research project. And the opening scenes of those kids, and you see them looking different ways and a lot of different emotions and things. I asked Craig, roll from the moment they walk into the room. I joked with them, I had conversation with them, aside from the questions they were expecting to hear. And so based on how we felt they answered things, what their interest level was, we were originally planning only to have 4 students because of camera management. But we started falling in love with some of their characters, some of their responses. And so we're like stretching it to 6, and we ended up going with 8 and breaking it up into 2 teams, as you saw. So
seeing those students at the beginning, you say they were kind of looking around being kids.
Yeah.
What kind of changes did you notice from the beginning to when you wrapped the film?
Yeah, I think, and as happy as we are about this film, and Craig recently said to me, this is still the film I'm proudest of. One of the things you need to do when you're making a film, any documentary film or any film, is at times let that film come to you. And so there were some surprises. We knew we wanted these 2 Korean American kids because we knew they would be surprised about Colonel Kim. We had no clue how Billy would be so attuned to his grandmother's history and would be bold enough to challenge Colonel Kim. Why are you with these guys? And that really gave us a gift. It was a really great moment. Another thing that really took a lot of courage, and that was Katie Webb, when she mentions that, she had this kind of animosity, an underlying animosity toward Japanese Americans because of her grandfather being at Pearl Harbor. How many people do you know that would be that honest and tell you that, and to let you know that this experience, meeting these people, inspired and informed her. And she realized that she was wrong to think what she thought, and that they're like anybody else. We're all Americans.
Yeah, that was amazing. That was amazing.
It was really, those were like really true gifts to us.
After you wrapped up, did you talk to the kids about what their biggest challenges were in doing this research?
Funny thing is, we did a debrief after every field trip and talked to the students, and we would then ask them to tell us what they learned that day and ask them to tell us how they relate that to their own family or their own life. And, I think for the most part, they rolled with it pretty well. I think the hard part was, as students get out of school, it was 2 months between our last shoot and that event, the memorial dedication, to the time that we got together with them to reshoot. So trying to keep that stuff fresh in mind was a challenge. Although I'm sure this experience will stay with them much longer, there is that idea that, if you're not in the heart of it, you're going to lose some of those facts. So,
do you still keep in touch with some of these kids?
Some of them I have. We actually, in 2009, was the year that they all graduated from college, and we had an event at the Torrance Library, and 4 or 5 of the students joined us. And so while typically we would have the veterans join us and be panelists with us, this time it was about those students, so they could share what that experience was like and what impact it had on their lives. And for Nicole, she actually told us that she wrote about that experience in her application to UC Irvine. So it was really nice that it was that meaningful to her that she could write in a way that would be inspirational and help her application process.
I notice in a lot of high school history classes, when they talk about World War II and the Japanese, the only Japanese they really talk about is Fred Korematsu. How do you think your film could fit into that sort of classroom study?
Well, we do have a classroom version. We have a 47-minute version of the film. It does cut out basically the Hawaiian Japanese story, but it still exists on that DVD. So it can be picked up as a chapter for students having extra time that they want to check into that. It also has a teacher's guide written by, of course, Gary Mukai of the SPICE program from Stanford University. Something that we need to work on now to update to make sure it's current with national standards. And also, there's suggested projects which also would need to be updated because everybody with a phone can make a film nowadays, So I think it's really neat that students have that technology and have the ability that inspired by something like this. And really for us, the strength of this film as a teaching tool is it's not old people trying to drill into young people why history is important. They're seeing their peers take an interest and draw the parallels between that history and their own lives. And between those 8 students, they're going to see themselves in one of them or as a collection of theirs. And so we really encourage teachers, if you're looking for something to share this history, Japanese Americans have made amazing contributions to this country, and you have the ability to share that story.
I do a lot of speaking about the Japanese experience during World War II, and the most interesting part of my presentation, or where I get most questions, is what you do leave out of the high school presentation, the conflict between the Hawaii and mainland Japanese, because that's a story that in itself is amazing.
Yeah, it is. It really is.
I have one last question, Ted, and then I'll let you close. But we saw the heroics and loyalty of Ted and his younger brother, but we didn't learn much about his family in camp. And one of the big stories that people learn about is what we call the no-no boys, that loyalty questionnaire, where if they said yes to one or no to the other or no and no, there was a lot of controversy, especially within the family structure.
Yes.
Was that dealt with at all in your studies?
We didn't really get into that aspect. I mean, I've come across it a lot in interviews, and actually in the books that I co-authored with Shane Sato, we did deal that in, specifically the story of Tetsu Sato, who was in the 442nd, because he had shared with me his friendship with No-No Boys and that experience, and the idea that, many of them were kind of ostracized in Japanese American communities afterwards for taking that stance. And he recognized the idea that even though he was a combat soldier, that they were taking another stance, that was a battle of sorts on a different front, the home front. And so he recognized that they paid a price for choosing to stand up for their rights before they would serve.
Well, it's interesting because back then, everybody's loyalty was one way, but nowadays, if we look at what they did in today's light, it seems like, they did the right thing.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting how things change.
Yeah.
That's really the final question that I have. Robert, do you have any last words that you'd like to give us?
If I was trying to finish up some work, so I don't know to what degree it was covered, but another momentous occasion is about to come upon us on June 3rd. The Go for Broke Japanese American Soldier of World War II stamp is coming out from the U.S. Postal Service. LA is the first city of issuance, and the Stamp Our Story Committee is doing a presentation along with a representative of the U.S. Postal Service. It's not an open to the public thing, but it will be streaming on Stamp Our Story, I believe it's stampourstory.com. So please tune in. If you thought this was of value to you, anyone out there watching this, and you'd like a copy of the film, or you'd like to donate a copy to a local library, or even the classroom version to a school, please get a hold of me. My email is natto41, Natto 41 @svcglobal.net. And there's a joke behind that, and if you contact me, I'll share the joke with you.
Does it have anything to do with natto?
It does. It's an order at a restaurant, because it was 4 years before my wife ever ate natto in front of me, and I was looking for what smelled so bad. It took me at least another 4 years to try it for the first time, and it just confirmed my first thought. So that's an order at a restaurant, natto for one. I'm not having any more.
Okay. Well, thank you, Robert, so much. It was a fabulous film, and I do appreciate your taking the time to be with us today. Thank you.
Steve, thank you for the opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we want to thank all the participants in today's Memorial Day service, specifically the organizers in the Northern California, Western Nevada Pacific District Council, and District Governor Carol Kawase. And UN Designs, especially Susan, thank you. Your technical abilities were great. Please stay tuned. After I go off, there's a honor roll montage of those speakers. And in closing, please get vaccinated, wear a mask, and stay safe. Steve Okamoto, out. Mm-hmm.